Summit Racing fans, welcome to our Summit Racing Facebook Live. I'm here with my coworker and friend, Brian Nutter, and today we are joined by the infamous Aaron Quine. Aaron has been a long time friend of Summit Racing Equipment. Actually got started with Summit when your dad was a customer many moons ago. And I guess we'll blame your dad for getting you into all this stuff in a very good, positive way. Aaron has driven an amazing variety of race cars over the years. And even today, you do some really awesome stuff. So Aaron, tell us about, I know where you're from, I know who you are, but our audience is going to get more familiar with you. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in Stowe, which is not too far from here, but moved over to the Talmadge area in my senior year. So we were just a mile up the road. Very convenient for us. My dad started racing Corvettes back in the days, and an old 66 Corvette. And that's what I grew up watching him race. And my senior year came, and as long as I had the money to run it and pitch in for tires and race fuel and entry fee, I got to race it.
Nice.
And worked my butt off, and was able to do that with my dad and my stepmom as well. And we did some autocrossing, road racing, and I just wanted to keep climbing the ladder and trying different things.
That's awesome. So when you started racing with Dad, it was always Corvettes, and I think your dad was a longtime Corvette club member, and I think, if I remember, everything you raced was Corvettes up until the Camaro you have now, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything pretty much was Corvettes. I did have a stint in 1995. I went up to Canada and I actually drove the Formula Ford series. I went to the Bridgestone Racing School and ran an open wheel car. And then we competed in a series real quick up there, and I actually finished third.
Nice.
So we had the two Canadians, 1-2, and I was the third American. So it was a fun little series, but open wheel car is a little different. And I kind of like to stick back to my full cage containment seat and a roof over my head.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A little easier. Cool. What's your favorite car that you've ever driven? And you've driven a lot of cars over the years. I mean, and you've driven a lot of other people's cars, which is probably the best way to drive something.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. You know? Yeah, their tires and everything. Man, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm always going to resort back to the Corvettes. That is my favorite car. But I mean, I've got to drive some Porsche IMSA type cars, GT3 Cup, McLarens, Ferraris. Man, the Trans Am cars are a hoot to drive, because the Trans Am, the TA2 car reminds me a lot, my Camaro car that I race, reminds me a lot of my dad's old 66 Corvette, where you got to drive the car. You know, you got to manhandle it. There's no ABS. There's no traction control. You got 15-inch tires, 15x10 tires, basically like
ABS and traction controls here, right?
That's it. You're the ABS traction. So you got to drive it. Yeah, it's got a lot more power than the old Corvette did, but just really fun to drive.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite pictures of you racing is in your dad's old Corvette at Mid-Ohio, hanging the tire in a turn, just getting after it. And it was, I don't remember who did it. Somebody took a picture of Aaron at Mid-Ohio back in the day in that Corvette, and then put a picture of you in the Camaro. The line is like on top of each other. Like the two pictures couldn't be so much more similar. So you are definitely a highly repeatable driver, because the mark on track was like so on point. I was like, that's impressive. I go, and that many years later too.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite picks. I think that is so cool.
That's pretty cool. We have that. That's in my race shop, hanging up on the wall. And that picture was taken by Tim Obert, who you guys both know as well. Tim shot that one, and I blew that up into a picture frame. And then as the years progressed, you know, I still have my C4 Corvette race car as well. So I have the pictures from 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020, all in the same corner, all blown up in posters. So it's kind of cool to show all those years of racing progression through the years, different cars, but the same turn.
That's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of Mid-Ohio, so you do a lot of things outside of driving race cars and stuff. Let's talk about Mid-Ohio.
Mid-Ohio was just there Tuesday. We had our high performance driving program, and I've been instructing with the school since probably the late 2000s. Obviously, I grew up in diapers there, but so it's my second home. But yeah, we just did a high performance school, so we have our teen school as well there. But yeah, if you want to be a race car driver for a day, 2 or 3 days, you can come down and see us.
Yeah, the Mid-Ohio School, if you ever wanted to try and get some road racing experience, Brian, I know you've been through it with the Honda School cars a long time ago. When I first started doing some road racing stuff, I was always a drag racer. Then I got into autocross, and then I said, you know, I want to do some track day stuff. And my lovely wife, Lisa, was awesome, and she bought me a class at Mid-Ohio. So I went down there knowing absolutely nothing about road racing, and the instructors were awesome. You go at the pace that you're comfortable with. They don't push you. As you get more comfortable, you just keep rolling. And I can't say enough. And obviously, Summit Racing has a relationship with Mid-Ohio. We sponsor the course and the track. But we do that for a very good reason. We want to get people into our hobby as deep as we can, enjoying it in a safe way with awesome instruction. And I mean, you go to the Mid-Ohio School, you've got, well, let's talk about some of the instructors that are there. Your background is amazing. And the
Tommy
stuff that you've
Byrne.
driven. Yeah, Tommy Byrne.
Ex-Formula One driver.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
yeah. I mean, how do you
Says
go
it all.
wrong with some guy going, you're really missing the line of that corner? It's like, I think I'm going to listen to that guy because he's driven more places on the planet than I could ever
That's
even imagine. And then you've got Scott. I mean, you've got Max.
Mad Max, Brian Till ran IndyCar in the mid '90s. I mean, we have a ton of talent at Mid-Ohio.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to go somewhere, have a good experience, look up Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course Driver School. They've got a teen driving program, which is absolutely awesome, but so many great ways to get down there. And that track is one of the most amazing tracks in the U.S. I mean, it is an awesome facility, just so much history and so much awesomeness there. But well, I'm glad you're part of that, Aaron.
Absolutely.
That's
I'm very fortunate to be involved with that. I mean, it's a place that I grew up watching my dad race at, and then I was fortunate enough to start racing there my senior year of high school, and then to be involved with the school it's priceless. I loved it.
Yeah. So what other instruction you do? I know you're I can't keep track of you. You are all over
I'm all over
the
the
country
map.
doing all kinds of things.
So I teach the Ford Racing School as well. I started there in 2014. It started in Salt Lake City, and then we just moved recently a couple of years ago down to Charlotte. So we run at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Right.
We use the Roval course, the same course that the NASCAR guys do, and we have a great program as well there too. Good group of instructors. You can go down there again, be a race car driver for a day, or if you bought like the new GT 500 with that car, you get the package and come down and you get to beat on our cars for the day.
Nice.
And then you can come back and do many different programs that we have. But it's a great school to be at, and it gets me out of Ohio in the colder weather. I can go down there in the winter and instruct.
Yeah, I have a nephew who went through the program. I don't know if you remember Tommy, my nephew.
Yes.
And you didn't yell at him too badly, and he was. It was so awesome talking to him about that because he's a young guy. He bought a Focus ST, got into the driving school, went and did it, and he goes, "Hey, you know a guy named Aaron who instructs at Ford?" I go, "Yeah, I know Aaron a little bit, you know." So we've only known each other, 20 years or however long it's been now. And he had an absolute blast, had a great time. And again, it was so great because it's somebody who's never had any road course experience. And I said, "What'd you think of that?" And he goes, "I got to do more of that." And I'm like, "You do need to do more of that."
I do remember that now, because then afterwards we were done for the day. I took him out for dinner in Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So one of these days when I go out to Bonneville, I got to go out and see him and his lovely wife, Jen, and hang out with them. But yeah, it's really cool seeing somebody who's never done it before. They go out, have such a good experience. And now actually he's bought a Miata, so he's starting to do some track stuff with that.
He's hooked. And then the Miata's going to be gutted and have a roll cage in it here.
Yeah, he's already there. Yeah, it's got flares on it, big wheels, big tires. I'm like, we need an LS swap for that. We have to make a few parts for that. But he's having a good time with that. So, hey, you've also done one lap too, right?
One Lap of America. It's funny. Brock Yates, senior, I think he's gone now, but junior, I stay in touch with here and there. But he always says, "When you coming back?" And I ran the One Lap of America in 2001 in that old D&D Corvette tube chassis Grand Sport.
Yes.
Dean owned a D&D Corvette before Mongoose bought it, which is out in Ravenna locally. And so he built a Roadster, no roof, no nothing, just like the old Roger Penske Roadster. It was painted orange. And we drove back then in 2001. It was a little harder. It was 7 days, but it was almost 7,000 miles.
In a car with no roof.
In a car with no roof.
Through whatever weather you're going to hit.
Oh, yeah. It was crazy. So I packed we had a little trunk in the back of the Corvette that we made, and we basically just had basic tools, your clothes, and really that's it, and my helmet and fire suit. And, we would drive to the track, and then we'd take the stuff out of the trunk to get my helmet on. Well, we were driving somewhere, I think through Kansas or something, and it started pouring. So we pull up under the freeway, under this bridge embankment, and I had my dad's Vietnam poncho. This big green poncho. I put this thing on, and then I put the hood up, put the helmet on over top of it, continue driving. And I just kind of slouched down in the seat a little bit because all we had was just a little windscreen. Yeah. So I kind of slide down on the seat a little bit so a little bit of the rain would bounce off. But
can you imagine traveling down the interstate and watching this guy just cruise?
We had
pull up next to him and look over like, what is that?
It's documented. It's actually documented in Car and Driver magazine. because they were covering the story back
Right,
then.
right.
And but we ended up breaking 3/4 of the way through. I think the transmission gave out at Watkins Glen, but we still finished in first in Vintage American. I think we were 18th overall out of 100 cars.
Wow.
So then 2002 came, and a buddy of mine, Mike Miller, who's local here too, built a coupe car. And it was a 434 cubic inch small block. It was a serious, and he built this car, and he says, I want you to win this thing. Wow. So he put me in the driver's seat, and we went back in 2002, and we duked it out with my good friend, Brian Smith, who's actually my boss at the Ford Racing School.
Oh, wow.
He was an old test driver for Michelin and did a lot of stuff with the Dodge Viper. Well, he drove the factory back Dodge Viper, and me and him duked it out 1 and 2. Back and forth, track to track. We'd have 2 races, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. I'd get him in the morning, he'd get me in the afternoon.
What was he driving, Aaron? What was
he was driving the Viper. It's kind of like an ACR, I guess it would be back in the day, or like a
wow.
Yeah,
and you're in the Grand Sport,
and I'm in an old school Grand Sport.
Wow.
Wheeling it. And but we went back and forth, and in the end, he got me. He was first overall, but I was second overall in that old Corvette.
That's awesome.
And we rocketed. But yeah, that year I think it was the same deal. It was 7 days. Almost 7,000 miles. And you didn't get the luxury of sleeping in the hotels like they do now. I think they only do like 32 to 3,300 miles nowadays.
Yeah.
And they pretty much give
I love
you
how you say only, it's only from like here to LA, and back half.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think they give you time, nowadays you can go to the hotel and get a good night's sleep and a shower, where we didn't have that. We literally drove all night long, bonsaiing to get to the track. We'd pull up to the gate before they even opened the gate in the morning, and you just shut the car off and fall asleep.
Yeah.
And that's all you got.
Yeah.
You did your runs and packed it up and move off again.
So let's talk a little bit of One Lap America, because I know some of our customers and fans will understand. They've heard of it, they've read about it, but I don't think everybody does. So I've been told, and I've never done One Lap, but Brian and I've talked about it. I'm like, that's a bucket list thing. At some point I'll do. But I've been told whoever you do it with, you got to be really good friends when you start. Because hopefully you'll be really good friends when it's done. But it's like being in a phone booth with somebody for a week.
Yes, it is.
Going, as fast as you need to get to track. If the car breaks, you got to fix it.
Right.
But tell us what it's like. I mean, that experience, it's got to be cool.
Yeah, that's your best buddy for 7 days, man. I mean, like I said, nowadays, at least you get a hotel room, but I did all the racing at the tracks.
Okay.
And then the owner, he helped drive in between. So a lot of the times you get to the point where you can only drive 2 hours, and I was just tired. I just needed to get over to the passenger seat and crash. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot different, now than it was back then. A little bit easier. I'd like to actually do it again. I really would.
Yeah.
And I'd like to do it in something more modern.
Yeah.
I mean, we did good back. That was 20 years ago, that we did that. But I would love to try something with, ABS or.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I know our good friend Danny Pop is itching to do it again at some point.
Man.
And he's getting back out after it, which is awesome to see him at different events this year. So thrilled about that. So maybe at some point we'll have to throw together a One Lap.
Oh my gosh, I would love to even team up with Danny. Danny and I basically have a lot of the same backgrounds. We grew up watching our dads, autocross and race the old Corvettes.
Yeah.
But Danny was in the Cincinnati region, and I was here in the Akron, so we didn't cross paths too much. But he's the master. He still is, and I just visited him a few weeks ago when I was down in Cincinnati.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see him getting after
for sure.
it. Well, at some point we'll have to figure that out and figure out how to go do that.
I remember him talking about that story where he was driving. What car was that? Oh, it was the Corvette GP replica car, and it was raining and it was wet inside, like it was like deep in
raining
the floor.
Inside the car.
Oh yeah. It wasn't completely sealed up, and he had the same story as you. He's just freezing and just driving.
That was the GTP Corvette that Mongoose made back in the day, and I actually hooked Danny up with that because I had a wedding to go to in Jamaica. And I could not make it.
Right.
And so they're like, well, we want to run this car. And they're like, do you have anybody? And I'm like, there's only one person I know. And I'm going to recommend to drive this car, and that's Danny Pop.
Right.
And so he took my place in that, and he just wheeled the snot out of it.
Yeah. I think I first met him when he was doing One Lap, and he called it the Spare Parts Corvette. It was a black primer.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the guy's name that he did it with.
Yeah, he was out of the Nashville area.
Onks, I think was his last
Jerry
name.
Onks.
Jerry Onks, that's it.
Yep, that's right.
And it was the craziest story because this car was literally thrown together out of spare parts. I mean, killer drivetrain and stuff. But the rest of the car, you'd look at it and be like, I wouldn't go 80 miles an hour in that thing, let alone 150 or 60 or whatever. And they're out tearing around. And I think that year they blew a brake line. I think it might have been at Nelson's.
I'm the one that came here to Summit and got it.
No,
No,
really?
Say, yeah,
Hey, we
so
had the
I
part
was-
stock.
yeah,
All right, good
yeah.
job, team. That's
So
awesome.
That year, you know, I didn't run, but I was in town. Of course, they came to Nelson, so it was only a short drive for me.
Right.
So I, you know, went out there and supported those guys, and they blew a brake line, and I'm like, "Give me that thing," you know. And I darted over here, got the part, ran back, and he made it for the afternoon session.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, it's funny thinking about how many years ago that was. That's been, what was that, 15, 18 years ago, something like that?
That had the, was that mid
Maybe
2000s, mid to late
Yeah.
mid 2000s, I want to say.
Yeah. Boy, that's a long time ago.
For sure.
Good stuff. So tell us about what you're racing now.
So what I've got now, I still have my old Camaro, the Trans Am car, the TA2 car. Unfortunately, it's on its 8th year. So it's kind of tired for pro racing. So I haven't been doing any of the TA2 pro stuff, but I do run SCCA club racing.
Okay.
And it's still great. We still run Nelson Ledges, Mid-Ohio. I mean, I can go run the Glen and many different tracks. And then I also teamed up, a good friend of mine is Mark Matisse. He's from up in the Put-in Bay area. He's got that Porsche 911 991.2 car.
Oh,
It's basically like an
nice.
IMSA car.
Right.
It's like a video game. It's paddle shift, 9,000 RPM, trash control, you dial it up. And so Mark and I met through some friends and turned into a tire customer. And then he learned that I raced. And so we started playing around in the IGT series, which is mostly Porsches. There's a couple Ferraris and other things in there too. So he asked if I wanted to co-drive with them because they had some 1.5 hour long Enduros.
Right.
So very nice of them to ask me. So I'm like, man, I've never driven a Porsche before, you know, I don't even know what to do, you know, and he goes, it's like a video game, you know, just jump in it and paddle shift and dial in the trash control, however you like it. And I remember I went to Daytona and we went down in December, and IGT was the opening race for, they do that Audi event every year down at Daytona in December. And so we were the race series for them. And so I got in and I ran my race. I started 7th first time in the car, and I ended up winning. It was a little bit of a rain.
Wow.
And so I wasn't sure how to work the trash control dials and stuff. So I just started playing with them because I noticed, you know, and it started drying out, and I couldn't get off the corner. And I'm like, what is going on with this car? Well, the trash control was dialed to 10.
Okay.
So I'm like, turn it down, moron. So I started turning it down, and I'm like getting off the corners more. And then I start reeling in cars, and then it's drying more. I keep turning all the way down till it's drying out. And then I just picked them off one by one, and I went on to win at Daytona.
That's awesome.
So that was really cool in the car. But that was a neat one. We did 183 mile an hour through trial.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Porsche.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a trip.
Yep.
That is pretty awesome. So so when you do driver instruction, one of the things I'm always interested in is, and I know probably can't mention names and things, who have you instructed that you've looked at and said, this is somebody who's just got it? Like they just flat out pick everything up, understand it, totally just get it. Like if you had people like that through the schools, I would imagine at some point.
Yeah, we get a few. For the most part, the guys and gals that come through our school, a lot of them just do it as kind of like a bucket list, you know, like jumping out of an airplane or a bungee jumping.
Yeah.
You know, there are some people that come to our school that want to get the tools to try and learn how to be a better racer.
Right.
So, yeah, I can't think of any particular names, but yeah, there's some men and women that actually come through the school, and it's like, wow, they get it.
Yeah.
You know, and they listen to you, and you know, they mirror us on the track. We do a lead follow program, and when you look in the rearview mirror and they're right on your bumper and they're, you know, hitting the apexes, you're like, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
You know, and you come in, you do a download session, and they're asking good questions, and you just get into different things like threshold braking, and they're asking really good questions. And it's like, yeah, they're gonna go somewhere.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is cool. Years ago, I remember you were racing at Mid-Ohio, and you had a very famous race car driver that you were doing some lead follow stuff with. And you were nice enough to get me an autograph, which I passed on to my friend Mike, because we grew up with the whole Chevy Ford rivalry and NASCAR and all that. But tell us about how that was, and meeting that gentleman and what that was like.
Yeah, great story. 2018, we were running SCCA Trans Am at Mid-Ohio, and we were also the opening act for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So Bill Elliott had seen the TA2 cars, and he's like, man, that's cool. And Bill, even though he was retired from NASCAR, he's still very much involved in road racing. Bill has some old, like a 70 Mach 1 Mustang. That's a pretty potent car, you know, set up for road racing. And so he saw our cars and he goes, I want to try that. And so ECC, who's good friends of mine out of Chicago, they sponsor my car too and help a lot of things. They hooked him up with him and said, hey, Bill, you can drive one of our spare cars. And it was a Camaro car just like mine. And he said, well, one problem. I have not been to Mid-Ohio since the late 80s when he ran the, if you remember, the IROC Challenge series, right?
Yeah.
So it was like 87 or 88. He goes, I flew in, I teamed up with Bobby Rahal, Al Unser Jr., and many others. And he goes, but I haven't been back since that late 80s. So he goes, I don't remember Mid-Ohio. And he go, well, lucky for you, we're going to team you up with a guy named Aaron Quine, who grew up in diapers here. He's an instructor. He's got a gazillion laps, and he's going to be your teammate and your coach. Wow. And so they called me, and I'm like, are you serious? And so him and Chase flew in and was kind of standing by too. And we hung out with them, and we did some practice days, and Bill was up to speed immediately.
Just picked it up.
Yeah. And at the time that was 2018. And I think Bill was 62.
Right.
In 18. So, and man, that guy could still wheel a car. So we went out on the track, and he goes, you're going out first. I'm going to follow you, lead follow. So then I tell the camera guy was there, and I'm like, dude, get this on film. I mean, get this documented. I got to have this picture of me leading Bill Elliott. Yeah. And so he did. He actually went out and got all the pictures of us, talking in the pits, download session. We were reviewing data on the laptop. I was looking at his in-car cam after we came in off the track, and kind of critiquing him a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing here critiquing Bill Elliott, showing him his way around Mid-Ohio. But he was super nice guy, and a good event. We actually out-qualified him, I think, by like 0.2 of a second. Mm-hmm. And then so we were, I forget what, 7th and 8th or whatever during the race to start, and then had some good racing going on. And I want to say about midway through, he broke an axle and had to pull off. But he came in after, and he says, that was really fun, and, thanked me for my help. And meanwhile, that photographer that was taking those pictures, I said, any chance you could, get the picture to me, and I'll run to like a Walmart and get it printed, like an 8x10, because I'd like to get him to sign this picture of me, him following me around the track. And so the photographer actually went and did it. Took the picture that he shot of us, went to a Walmart, quick 1 hour deal, printed the picture, brought it back to me, and Bill's like, anything I can, do for you? And I'm like, yeah, sign this picture.
That's awesome.
So I have that framed and in my race shop.
That's
and
cool.
then I got a picture of him with him as well.
What an incredible memory.
That was pretty cool.
I just can't believe that someone like that with so much fame and NASCAR notoriety goes, yeah, I want to jump out and jump in the car in Mid-Ohio, and that looks awesome. I want to try that. Yeah. That is so cool. I want to be him when I grow up.
Right.
Yeah, that is so cool.
And Chase, what was funny is that weekend, 2018, Chase was on his way. They got done, and they actually jumped on their plane. Bill flies his own plane, by the way.
Okay.
And so they landed at a little regional airport not far from Mid-Ohio, and then they had got picked up. But they had to dart right after the race because they were flying out to Watkins Glen for Chase to run the NASCAR road race there.
Okay.
And Chase won that weekend at Watkins Glen.
That's cool.
That was pretty cool. It was his first road race. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What an incredible family. Mm-hmm. I mean, man, that is it's amazing you had that opportunity
for sure.
That, man. That is super cool. So have you had anybody else, like you taking Richard Petty around or anything like that,
No, but I know the one things I know you talked about before is somebody that, if you had to go racing with or drive with, I think was one of your questions. And like growing up, I'd say my childhood favorite was Mario Andretti.
Mm-hmm.
The Indy cars down in Mid-Ohio. I mean, Mario was awesome. Bobby Rahal, all that, Rick Mears, but Mario always stood out, right? I mean, everybody knew Mario. I mean, they did Formula One, IndyCar, and all that. And I just thought, man, that's really cool. If I could meet him someday, and I did. I teamed up with Adam Andretti, a good friend of mine. He taught the racing schools with us as well, so we got to meet Uncle Mario. But the cool thing, another cool story, back to 2014 was my first Trans Am race at Mid-Ohio, and I actually drove for David Jans, and David Jans was part owner of the Trans Am series, and actually still is a little bit. And he had a Mustang TA2 car. Okay. And so this was before I built my Camaro, and my buddy was crew chiefing for him. And so he built this car, did a couple races, put some other guys in it, but was kind of stepping back and wanted to concentrate on the Trans Am series. So my buddy goes, man, why don't you put my buddy Aaron Quine in the car? He's never done a pro race before. He grew up at Mid-Ohio. He's got a gazillion laps here. Trust me, he'll do decent, So he hooks me up with this guy. I fly up to Chicago. We go out to dinner and we go karting at K1 speed and, cool. Get to know each other. And he goes, all right. He says, you come up and pick my car up. You take it back home. You
Wow.
decal it how you want to. Decorate it, wrap the car, whatever. And so he sponsored me for 7 races. So we got the car. We had to work on it, you know, and we had to drum up sponsorship money to operate it. And I was very blessed to get that help from different people. And the first race we went to Mid-Ohio, and I'm sweating bullets. I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally got to a pro race in Trans Am.
Right.
And Tommy Kendall was still racing the series at the time. Oh yeah. So Tommy was probably one of my biggest road race idols, and you know, and cars growing up. And so we qualify. And I think I qualified like 7th as there as well out of 38 cars back in 2014.
Right.
Big fields, right? And Tommy qualifies right behind me. I think I got him by a couple thousandths or something. So we go to grid at Mid-Ohio, and we're pulling up in, and Tommy's slime green Dodge is already there. And I was driving a grabber orange Mustang. And so I pull up into my open slot in front of him, you know, before the pre-race festivities. And so I get out of the car, and I get this tap on the back of my shoulder. And I don't know, for you know, Tommy Kendall's like 6'3".
Yeah, right.
So, you know, I turn around and I look up, and there's Tommy. I'm like, Tommy, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, so nice to meet you, you know, and shaking his hand. And he goes, who are you? You know, and I says, oh yeah, I'm Aaron Quine. This is my first Trans Am race, and you know, first time in these cars. I said, but you know, I've got a lot of laps here. You know, I grew up here watching my dad. And he goes, hell of a run, kid. He says, you out-qualified me. And he says, let's have a good race. And but I told him, I says, I sat up in the keyhole as a kid watching when he ran the old IMSA GTU and GTP cars. It sounded like a jet airplane going down the back straightaway when you leave the keyhole. And he goes, really? No kidding. I'm like, dude, you were my idol. I said, we watched you. And I says, and now I get to race with you. And so we went out, and this was filmed live on TV back then. And we duked it out for like 25 to 30 minutes on television. And they're like, who's this Aaron Quine guy? He's up to 6th place or whatever, and moving up to 5th. And Tommy Kendall, and they're duking it out back and forth. And then my crew chief was on the radio saying, don't screw up now. You're on every jumbotron on the track. You're on live TV, and the commentators are talking about you, about how you grew up here. You know, your dad raced here. And he says, you're getting some really good press right now. So it was great. I raced Tommy Kendall any day, but we went back and forth, front and back, and he ended up breaking 2 and had to pull off. And I was up to 3rd, and a couple laps. We got a full course caution with a few laps to go. And on the restart, I got punted off the track. And I'm like, no, because I wanted on the podium so bad. My first, pro race. And I'm like, come on, man. Adam Andretti was in P1, and I forget who was P2, but I'm like, man, I can stand on the podium with Andretti, my first race. And I got punted, and I went back to like 9th, and then I climbed back up to 5th. In 2 laps, I was on a rage. So I got back up to 5th. So that was my first pro race, was P5 out of like 38 cars. But yeah, I got the race with the legend Tommy Kendall, and he's such a great guy, class act. And little did I know, but down the road, Tommy was still doing contract work for Dodge. And at the time, I was still working for Kumo doing tire testing and different things, if you remember. And so my job was to give feedback on the Viper ACR that Kumo developed the tire for. So I was the test driver on the Kumo side. Tommy Kendall was the test driver on the Dodge side. So they wanted 2 different opinions of the tires. And my job was to go all over the racetracks around the United States and thrash the crap out of the Viper ACR.
That's a rough job.
Yeah, tough job. And they give you like 8 different compounds of tires, and you'd have to try and narrow it down to the best tire. And then Tommy, hopefully we would agree on the same compound. But it was just kind of fight. Just got to race with him. Now I got to work with him for a whole week.
That's now was that the tire that became the 720?
That was the 720.
Dude, I think it's a legend.
Oh yeah, that tire.
It was outlawed by
people built cars around that tire because it's only available in a handful of sizes. It's the Viper tire. And it's so funny because all these people I shouldn't say all these people, but several people built cars around that tire, and then SCCA went, no, that thing is really, really obscenely good. They're like, that's got to go away. And since it's only available in 2 sizes, it's definitely not exactly a fair level competitive playing field. Yes, that's right. Optima outlawed it. I don't remember if Good Guys outlawed it, but I think everybody was like, that Viper tire tire's got to go
early
away.
on.
So you did too good of a job, Aaron.
Yeah, it was an awesome tire. And, that Viper was like a 355, 30, 19 in the back and, and a real small sidewall up in the front, but it was limited sizes, but it was supposed to be a 180 compound, but it was probably like a 50 compound. But it was a good tire. And then they obviously, so they had to make some changes, obviously. And then they made it available more sizes, but I think they've got something else out now. It's like a V730, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. So, Brian, we've got some customers that have thrown some comments in there.
And we see Marshall over there. Tim.
Speaking of Tim Ober,
he's up there. He's heard good things about this guy.
Yeah. Tim Ober. We see Tim and I also, he was Corvette Cleveland and I was Tire Town out of Akron here, but same thing. His mom and dad raced.
Yeah.
And, we all were a big family back then. So Tim and I, grew up together watching our parents race cars as well too.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tim Ober connection, and I'm going to brag on you a little bit because I know you won't talk about this, but I want to.
All right.
So really cool story. And our industry is full of people who develop great friendships, lifelong friendships in many cases. And I think you and Tim are pretty much lifelong friends, right? Like you guys have known each other forever. Well, Tim's family had a Corvette that they raced forever. And the car, like many of us have had, that car in the past that gets sold, goes away, and you're always bummed about it. I got a Corvette my brother owned that I'm going to get that car someday, but not the car. The stars aren't aligned yet. Well, you found Tim's family's old car and went and got it. And then I remember when you called me and said, hey, I'm going to work on this car. Here's what's going on. And I'm like, that is a cool project.
Right.
And you did the unveiling of that car after you put in all the work, all the sweat with a bunch of buddies of yours. And then Tim now is reunited with that family race car. Talk about that car and the history behind it, because it's a cool story.
Yeah. So forgive me if I missed the date, Tim, if you're watching. So I think it was 1985 that your parents moved to Maine. Your dad got a job transfer. And I believe they said there was no Corvette clubs or racetracks in Maine back then. So why drag that race car up there? So they actually sold it to Bill Hall from our Corvette club here in Akron. My dad tried to get it, but he wasn't quick enough. So Bill Hall bought it, and it was a beautiful orange, yellow, and red paint scheme. Bill Hall takes it and paints everything that was orange and paints it black. So everybody's got their own paint scheme. So he drove it, and I believe it was right around 91 that he blew up the motor at Mid-Ohio. And he got mad, and it was parked on the side of the garage, and it had weeds growing through it. And my dad at the time, I believe, was president of the Corvette Club, and Bill Hull was vice president, and they had like a board meeting at his house. And my dad went over there for a board meeting with all the other officers, and he pulls in the driveway and he sees the race car sitting there with weeds growing through it. And he's like, Bill, what are you going to do with the car, man? And he goes, I'm going to fix it. That old story. Yeah, I'll fix it. And my dad's like, sell it to somebody so we can get on. He says, I'm interested. I'll buy it. It's not for sale. I'll fix it.
Right.
And so my dad says, okay, well, the rules. If you ever do go to sell it, we try to offer it to the club members first before you go outside. And whatever. Well, the car sold, never knew it.
Okay.
Tim found it, I believe, in Mansfield. I forget what year. And I think the guy wanted too much money or something for it and just passed. But and then the car disappeared and we didn't know where it went. And I have this crazy thing. I don't know, just, with networking and knowing people and browsing the forums and the internets, and I see this car pop up, and it was like a silver color, and it had part of a cage cut out, but something about the body shape looked familiar. And mind you, I've known this this car since I was little, so I don't know, I've got this photographic memory, and I'm like, man, that kind of looks like Obert's old car with a different hood, but the flares and the wheels were the same. And I sent the link to Tim, and he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, man, I think it is. And then you zoomed in and it had some old Firestone dry rotted tires on it. Okay. And Tim's uncle, I believe, was a Firestone engineer. And so I think that's where they got some of the race tires back in the day. And I zoomed in. I'm like, look at the Firestone tires on that car. I think that's it, because they don't make that tire.
Right.
And sure enough, that was the car.
Wow.
And so it was chopped up. Unfortunately, they had cut the cage out of it. No motor, no trans, no cell. But the title on the VIN was there.
There you go.
And that's all that matters. And so Tim was in a position to get the car. And I was like, I'll go halves with you. And it just didn't work out. And he couldn't come up with it. So I had been blessed and helped by many people. And at the time I was in a position and I had some stash money.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what, I gave him every opportunity to get the car and go has, but he just couldn't pull it off. And I'm like, I thought how thankful I am to have my dad's old Corvettes. My dad's since gone, and I got to race those. Tim never got to race that car, you know, because they sold it before he got into the racing. So I can only imagine, you know, he wanted the car, but, you know, it was gone. So I just thought, you know what, we're going to do a pay it forward here. So I secretly drove up to Minneapolis, 15 hours in the middle of winter, got this car, winched it in my enclosed trailer, brought it back to my race shop. And then Tim came over to the shop one day to see what I was doing with the Camaro and walked in the door and saw his parents' car and, you know, kind of, you know, couldn't believe it. And I'm like, all right, here's the deal. You know, we got the car. I used all the money I got. And I said, you got to get me your photo album from your mom so that we can replicate this thing back to the way it was, down to the color, you know, details as best we can with some new modern things. So, so we did. He got the photo album from his mom and mom and dad. And basically we just opened up the book and started making things. Everything was going on the car. Everything. The dash pad was there and a steering column, but everything else was gone. So, I had a ball. It's like building models as a kid. I love building models. It's just a big model we're going to build, and we're going to make it look like it did. So we got all the Corvette Club people that chip in, and, you know, Mario and the club donated a transmission, you know, because we didn't have that. And Jerry Waltenberg and the Corvette Club had an engine, and so we just chipped in, and we got, you know, came down here, bought lots of stuff from Summit, and you guys jumped on board with it, and we got this car back together, and we got Tim in the car to race it. And his mom and dad got to see him race it, which is even better. His mom has since passed, but she was kind of going down hills, and I was kind of tapped out. So we got a lot of help from people, and we finished the car and we got it out to Dragway 42 where they autocross. And, you know, she came out in her wheelchair and everything, and it was a pretty emotional day. So she got to see him race the car, and it was just awesome. So Tim, the car's over in my garage, and so Tim's always welcome to race at any time. But
that's a trip. I remember the day that showed up on Facebook. Wow, what a trippy car. Now I'm trying to remember, does it have turbines on it or does it have slots?
It's slots. The old Anson wheel. Anson
right.
I love that. That's my favorite wheel growing up.
Yeah, totally.
Between that and the torque thrust, those were both the top.
The wheel to have.
They look so good on that car too.
Anson Sprints was the original wheel, 15 by 10s, and you know, Hoosier heard about the story, so they threw in a set of tires to help out. You know, and you guys helped out as well too, so that to bring this car back and make a reunion with it. So
well, the unveiling was the coolest thing, and Tim's mom, God rest her soul, was such an awesome lady. She was. I mean, she was
our track mom.
I remember the stories you guys were telling, and I'm like, man, how awesome is that? So, Aaron, pretty awesome. You were able to make that happen. Sure. So that's,
and you even got the run. You got the wheeled around too.
I did. That car is a bad dude, man. That thing is so much fun.
He was talking about that for weeks after.
I need to get one of these. Like, all right, enough of that orange Corvette.
Now you picked up Krusty and everything like that.
So I got the old coupe now that I have. So I'm gonna do a little bit of autocrossing with that. It won't be at the level where you guys are with that car, but that car to this day is one of the favorite cars I've ever driven, because you said it before. Like, you know, I have a late model Corvette. I get, you know, the C8 I have. ABS, traction control, launch control. It's like everything control. It ought to have a button called Al control to keep me from screwing it up. But the car is unbelievable. That car, though, is so polar opposite, but they're both awesome in their own right.
Right.
That car is so analog, and everything you do, you got to be looking really far ahead, because the car's wicked fast. I mean, that thing is awesome. So
you can drive that car. You can drive anything.
Yeah,
you know. I mean, at least you had power steering though too. You know, so my dad's car obviously was just like that, but no power steering.
Oh,
you know, we ran the Hoosier bias ply tires.
Oh,
growing up, I was not a bulky guy. You know, I was skin and bones growing up, and so I'm like, Dad, come on, can we put power steering on this thing? Because we're trying to drive it at Mid Ohio and Nelson's, and we did eventually. But you
just
had to get up on that wheel, and you saw Nelson at the 42. We got you on video driving it, but you were grinning pretty ear. That was a fun car.
Cool. That car is a lot of fun.
A lot of people actually pay you to actually set up their cars. And you have to set it up for them, not necessarily for you. I mean, tell us about that experience, and like when somebody comes to you with a brand new car, and how does that process work?
Well, some of the stuff, I mean, we'll help members out. We don't do too much setup. We do mostly our own things. But I have a good friend, Lance Mallett. You guys probably know Mallett. Lance does all the setup on my car, all of my cars, the old Corvettes, the Camaro. He'll do the corner balance and everything. But that is so important. I didn't know that growing up. when me and my dad raced back in the day, we just drove the car, right?
Mhm.
If it pushed like a pig, you dealt with it.
Right.
You know, we weren't really into making those adjustments. And then it wasn't until later on I really learned, like, hey, you know, try a different sway bar, you know, try different spring rates, you know, do a different tire pressure, add some camber, take out some camber. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, we started going quicker and
finally
getting
get
the car
right.
handling
Yeah.
better. And then I worked at Kumo doing all the tire development. And, you know, I went to 24-hour Le Mans, France, and I learned so much, you know, by there doing tire data and temperatures on the tires that I could take that back to my own racing and
Mhm.
educate myself. And we really started getting the car dialed in.
That's a trip. I mean, even working on your C8, you know, just thinking about what that car started off with, and you know how you've developed yourself. You know, developed the car, figured out the tire needed on the front of it to get the balance right.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, kind of like his relationship with Lance. So Danny, Pop, our good friend in Cincinnati, I've had that car to Cincinnati 3 times with 3 different alignments and scalings on it because, and the C8 from the factory is a great car, but it understeers, and it understeers for a good reason. That keeps people safe when you're going fast on a road course, autocross, whatever. Well, I like stuff more neutral as you can get it, with the engine now being behind you and all the weight balance shifted around. So that car now, and another good friend of ours, Rob Clark in Cincinnati, is going to go to SCCA Nationals with a red C that he's got, and he's super fast, so he should do really well there. But those changes, Aaron, like you said, that car is so different from the day I bought it, with the corner weighting, scaling, alignment, all the help that Danny gave me with that car is invaluable. And that's somebody who's got just a wealth of knowledge in Corvette stuff that he's been around his whole life, and he's worked on everybody's stuff his whole life. But it is amazing when you get to a point with a car and you say, okay, it's good, but I want it to get better. A little bit of camber, little change in toe, just very small things can make a dramatic bit of difference. And you mentioned tires, and we're going to talk in an upcoming video for Summit about tires and how important it is, especially with the barn find Corvette I had, because as I started to get the car back together and I put the wheels and tires back on, I went, oh, these are really cracked and dry rotted. This has got to go. So those are out, but tire selection is so important. So I'm going to try some different tires on the C8 and see how, you know, I like those compared. But it's amazing, and you having the background you have in tire testing, the 200 treadwear tire wars. And it's fun because on Facebook and in a bunch of the different SCCA autocross groups and everything, everybody's got an opinion on what's the best tire. You know, what is the best 200 treadwear tire? What's flavor of the day? Is it the Rival, the Yokohama, RT660? You know, now we've got some other new players out. But Aaron, what have you seen in that space? And like, do you have people that chase, like, I've never been one to chase like flavor of the day in tires. I need to work on me as much as I need to work on tires on the car, if not more. So I look at it and go, when the tires wear out, I'll put a set on and I'll try to make a good judgment call about what to do. But I'm not going to, I ran the set of tires and it's the tires' fault I didn't go fast. No, it's usually my fault I didn't go fast. But there are some people that just, you got 6 sets of 200 treadwear tires in what's supposed to be an economical sport. And you look at it and go, you know, I don't know if 1 to 6 on those tires is going to be a half second different, you know. But what's your experience? What are you seeing in that? Are you seeing the crazy tire wars continuing? And
yeah, same thing. You know, you see the guys with those 3-4 sets of wheels, and one guy's going to run the Rivals on one, you know, or something on our Michelins, or they got whatever's quick that day. Well, these aren't hooking up to. Let me try this set. And they're all over the map. I don't know. I guess I just stick with my one tire. I mean, I grew up, you know, Hoosiers and Goodyears, you know, Goodyear's right here in Akron. Goodyear probably, we did a lot of stuff with Goodyear back in the day, but Hoosiers are a great tire. They're made right here in the USA. But, you know, and that's a different, you know, I didn't do too much street tire stuff though, too, growing up.
You've always been a race.
Even when we autocross growing up on the Corvette, we ran a bias ply 15-inch street TD tire.
Right.
And that's what you ran. We didn't run, you know, a 200 treadwear tire. So I've been on race tires my whole life. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty cool. There's a question. I'll come back to it.
Yeah, no worries. So with driving the bias play stuff, Aaron, what developments have you seen in those tires particularly? Because I've got a friend who runs a Shelby Mustang and SVRA that we've known each other our whole life. And we did a track day at Pitt years ago when he brought his 65 SVRA Shelby up, and I'm running around an old red and he's running around in that. And I couldn't believe he was fast on those bias plies, but it's fast but sketchy, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sketchy and darty, that old bias ply tires rolling over on the side,
right.
And you get, but that's what I grew up on. And then when I went to a radial, that stiffer sidewall, it changed everything.
Right.
Not only did it change the tire, but we had to change the car too. Your spring rates and everything changed when you go from a bias ply to a radial or vice versa.
That was painful for the Cup guys and some of the guys that were really, really fast on a bias, and it took them a couple of years actually to come around to a radial.
Yeah. And I was excited. Actually speaking, they still had, when we ran Trans Am, when Trans Am started in the TA2 series, they were running a 15x10 bias ply tire. And I thought, great, I'm using this one. I'm going to be dialed right in.
Right.
And so we did run it for the first couple of years, but they changed to a 15x10 radial tire, just basically like the NASCAR guys. Yeah. And we ran that. And, but yeah, it's a learning curve, but we went, I think it was like 1.5, almost 2 seconds a lap quicker going from a bias ply tire to a radial.
Wow.
That's it. I mean, that was the only change. So you change the tire, change some spring rates, and it was that much quicker. A lot less roll.
I remember where I was going with that. So tell me about, you've been driving these old Corvettes for all your life, and then you start getting some modern cars with aero and all that stuff. What was that experience like when the first time you had stick that you never had before?
Yeah.
And having to go back and forth between those cars now.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point there. Old school Muncie 4-speed car, you're heel and toe down shifting, and then you go to the Porsche 991.2 car and you're left foot braking the whole time. And so you're just sitting there like that, and it's just boop, 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 battle shift. And when you turn, the car turns. Right. I mean, you move the steering wheel that little bit, it darts in. Where you turn the old steering wheel in the old 66 Corvette, you turn, then it turns.
Right. I was watching the thing on the new GT3 RS, and that thing just looks amazing. Carbon everything out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little video out. I'll find it for you guys. It's pretty awesome.
Neat cars. And I have never driven in my life, a rear engine car or anything like that. So I started out very respectfully. It wasn't my car, big dollar car. And I just gradually, getting the pace up, and then you just get into a groove, but it's a hoot to drive. But I still like to jump back in the old school cars and throw them around too.
That's cool.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about Nelson Ledges. That's another, you've got a couple home tracks. Yeah. But Nelson's, you've wheeled around Nelson's a couple of times.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we're right in the center. I mean, we were either, 55 minutes in Nelson Ledges or 55 minutes in Mid-Ohio growing up. I mean, obviously those were the two top ones. And my dad would travel all other places like Roebling Road and Savannah. But yeah, I mean, Nelson's in Mid-Ohio, man, I grew up in diapers there. I mean, that's,
I'll tell you, it's great to see the new ownership at Nelson's too. And if anybody is a racing fan and you haven't been out to Nelson's in a while, you got to get out there and check it out.
Yeah.
We're so lucky to have Nelson's, Mid-Ohio, and then we even have Pit Race within close
hour and a half away. Yeah.
All three phenomenal racetracks, and the new ownership at Nelson's is doing an amazing job with the improvements they're making at the place. They've repaved it. If everybody remembers Nelson's, way before the current owner. So I want to say that now the track surface is really good. But 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of like racing on a washboard.
Yeah,
it was bad. It was pretty rough. Yeah. And so it's awesome to see when that track got sold. I remember hearing it got sold, and there was all this talk and speculation that's going to get turned into a housing development or this or that. And it was like, oh no, I hope that doesn't happen to that track. And it's one of the most historic racetracks. I think it's one of the highest average speed tracks because it's a fast course.
Average speed. It's the fastest 2-mile course in the United States.
Wow.
2 mile
That's
long.
Amazing.
And just to give you an idea, there's faster cars in mine, but in TA2, in my car, I just set the track record there in May, and I averaged 112 mile an hour.
Average.
What
kind of time?
So I ran a 105.920 for the track record in GT2 SCCA.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. But just to give you an idea, that Formula Atlantic car, which is like a miniature Indy car, he broke the track record for his class at 58 seconds.
Right.
That's
amazing.
Wow.
So
I can see those corners in my head right now. And that's what's awesome about Mid-Ohio and these things is you just go out there, and I think within 5 laps, you just had this feel, these legendary corners and the back straight there. I'm thinking about that thing right now. I never could take that thing flat, and some guys could.
Yeah, depending what you're driving.
Well, the weirdest part of that, I think you might have been one of the people who told me back before the current owners with the barn. Just aim for the barn, you'll be fine.
Right.
I mean, it's
reference points.
It's like, wait a minute, I'm going through a kink, flat footing it through there, and I'm looking at a barn, and every time through, Actually, it was our friend Sean Humphreys.
Oh yeah.
He rode with me, and I kept lifting it. He goes, "Stop looking at the barn. You're not going to drive through the barn. Keep your foot down." And I'm like, all right. And finally, once I did it, I'm like, okay, so thanks to the new owners for tearing the barn down, because now I don't look and see that barn and want to lift because I think I'm going to drive through the barn. So they did a nice job improving that. But it was such a weird feeling at Nelson's, though, doing that, because you could never really, like, for me mentally, if I look and see a big structure, my right foot is not going to stay glued to the floor. It just, and I had to really like get over that.
Mm-hmm.
And but that track is awesome. We're lucky to have it.
Anybody that's watching, give Nelson's another shot. Brian and the gang out there at Nelson's you guys have no clue what they've done this thing. They've added the FIA red and white curbing to the track. The facilities are great. Crossing over the track, you guys, we used to have the gravel roads. Yeah. They're paving a lot of that stuff now. So get back out there if you haven't been out there. The track is phenomenal. They're really trying to bring the history back, and thank God they did get it and bring it back, because, a lot of people don't realize how rich history Nelson's is. It goes back to, there's some greats that raced there. You even had Tom Cruise did his racing back in the day. If you guys look that up, he did I think it was the red, white, and blue Datsuns. The Datsun 280Zs. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If you guys look it up online, you'll see a video of him racing. He teamed up with Paul Newman. Yeah. Paul Newman did some racing back in the day.
I knew Paul Newman did, but I never
ran
knew
the
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, look it up. Tom Cruise ran
awesome.
some days back at Nelson.
So, but this the old
racing cars,
would
have been the early 80s. I want to say that was 83-ish, 84-ish that he was running around there. But yeah.
Right after Risky Business.
Yeah, right, exactly. And but yeah, Tom did some racing for a short stint, and but yeah, track's awesome. I mean, I grew up there watching my dad, and I used to critique him. I'd watch my dad, come through the kink, and he'd come in off the track. I'm like, Dad, man, I think you can go a little faster through the kink. And he'd look at me and go, "You think you're so good? You wait till it's your turn and you try it." So I got, to 18 years old, and I worked my way up and worked on the car. And that was the deal with my dad. He loved you to death, but old school, man.
Yeah, man.
You gotta work for it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so I saved my money, man. I was mowing lawns around the neighborhood, painting houses, you name it. I did it because I wanted to have that money ready to go racing. Right. And so my first time I got to go out and race my dad's old 66 at Nelson's, I went out and I beat the track record in his class that he'd been trying to beat forever. And I pull in off the track, and he's standing there like this. And I take my helmet off, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Find a new car to drive," jokingly, And I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You just broke the track record I've been trying to beat."
Okay.
So that was just kind of a funny story with my dad. That's my first time on track.
With all the stories of your dad, Aaron, I never knew your dad, but you were really blessed to have a dad that encouraged you and walked you through everything, and was just awesome.
Yep.
I mean, everything I've ever heard. So it's pretty cool you had that experience. Mm-hmm. Hey, Mark Nolan gave a shout out to the Mid-Ohio School and said he had such a great experience. Mark Nolan's a good friend of Summit, great customer of Summit. And he's right. At Mid-Ohio, we're going to do the Aaron Quine money back guarantee. If you go to the Mid-Ohio School, Aaron will personally give you your money back if you don't have a good time there. But no, in all seriousness, the Mid-Ohio School, we've had a lot of customers, a lot of people that we're friends with that have gone through the school. I've never had anybody say anything but great stuff about it. So if you want to go out, like Aaron was saying, it's a bucket list item. Maybe you want to go try it. Go out and do it. We're talking about Nelson Ledges and Pit Race. You can do track night in America in either one of those courses. You can take a car you've got. If you've got a late model Corvette, Camaro, Mustang, even if you've got something like a Focus ST, something that you want to get some track experience, make sure your obviously lug nuts are tight. Make sure you got oil in it. Buy safety gear from us because you're going to need to have a helmet and all that good stuff. There's tons of ways that you can get out there and get after it and try it and enjoy this stuff. Yeah. Which is really, really cool. Ethan Rutherford asked a question, Aaron, what's your most memorable story about being at Mid-Ohio? That one with your dad and the track records, that's pretty cool. That's probably hard to beat. Cool.
Ethan, I gotta say, I mean, that Tommy Kendall one I talked about in 2014 was pretty cool, but the top of the list goes to 2019 when I got a call 4 days before the NASCAR Xfinity race,
I remember that.
And said, "Hey, there's a team, Mike Harmon out of the Mooresville, North Carolina. It's a smaller budget team, and something happened with their driver that was supposed to race at Mid-Ohio, couldn't make it 4 days out, and would you be interested in driving? And I says, man, I would love to, but I can't bring much to the table. Sometimes certain teams you have to bring, some money in or sponsorships in. And I go, man, I don't know if I can pull it off 4 days out. And so we made some calls. I made a post up on Facebook and friends, you guys, it's just crazy what happened in 4 days. We were able to do my first NASCAR Xfinity race. And actually, I actually owe it to Josh Balicki. Josh Balicki actually runs NASCAR almost full time right now. And so Mike Harmon was asking around, hey, anybody know anybody good, road course guys for the NASCAR? And my buddy Josh threw my name out and said, man, Aaron grew up there in diapers. He's got more laps around there than all the NASCAR drivers combined. But, he might not have some funding to help out. So he called me and we worked it. We made it. And I got to do our first NASCAR Xfinity race. And no practice, no nothing. And we got in this big old boat of 3,500 pounds compared to my car, which is 2,800 and about 500 horse, maybe a little bit more. And then you get in the Xfinity car, it was 800, a little over 800 horse, 3,500 pounds. And so we went out and I got one practice session and then we went right to qualifying. And I think there was 36 or 37 cars that year. And I qualified 31st. And I said, that's all right. It's a long race. We got 3 hours to work at it. And they had nothing working in this car. It was cool. I didn't even care. I had no cool shirt. All the other drivers, get the cool shirt. They have the helmet blowers. I have nothing. I mean, this car was
3-hour race.
It was basically like a Bristol roundy round car. It wasn't even set up for Mid Ohio, but I didn't care. I didn't care, man. I'm getting to run NASCAR.
I'm in there.
I'm in there. And so they got this big old seat because Mike Harmon's got a bigger guy, And so the seat was kind of made for him. I'm like, man, you guys got any padding? And I'm like, anything, grab a towel. And so I'm in this car cinched down, but the seat is so big and I'm still moving around. So they're wedging stuff down in. Anything they can grab, they're wedging in.
Hamburger wrappers and stuff.
Something. But we ran the race and I was actually up to 20th, I believe, halfway through the race. And, they do the segments. There was like 3 segments. And we had just gotten through segment 2 and I was up to 20th and they're like, oh my gosh, you're doing great in this car. And we had a restart and we were up in the keyhole and Justin Allgaier got punted by somebody. And it was one of those deals. I was in the wrong spot, the wrong time. And I couldn't swerve left. And I couldn't swerve right to avoid the accident. And I got caught up in it. And so it ended up, we didn't know at the time, but we got the hood damaged a little bit in the fender and it cut a tire, but I limped it back to pit under yellow and national television, they're banging the hood out. I'm like, hey, I'm getting TV time.
Well, the great part of that, Aaron, from a selfish sponsor standpoint, we had Summit Racing on the hood of that car. So we are on national television, even though the hood's folded up. Our logo was bright and clear. Our graphics group did an awesome job of coming up with the scheme we had on the car. But I remember watching that and people texted me going, look at all the airtime we're getting. And I'm like, it's not bad. I go, that old saying, there's no bad PR. That'd be a case there, even though you had that little mishap. It was good TV time.
It's not how I wanted to get you, but we got it for you.
But it's a cool story too, where it's somebody local. You've been a customer forever, and you're a great driver, and you had the opportunity, and a bunch of people came together and helped you make it happen, and you made it happen, which is the big deal.
I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I just thought, we were going to be there racing anyways in the Trans Am series with the Camaro, and I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool to do double duty and run the Xfinity? And it happened. And to even go back furthermore on this, my dad and I, we used to love watching NASCAR, but we mostly watched the road racing. So when they ran Sonoma, Watkins Glen, that's what we watched together. My dad used to always say when he was alive, he goes, man, if NASCAR ever came to Mid-Ohio and you get to get a shot to drive. I thought, oh my gosh. And then I got a shot to do it. Unfortunately, my dad's been gone now about 10 years, but didn't get to see it. But he was watching over me. Yeah,
that's right. Absolutely is. Well, Brian, do we have any other shout outs here? Tim Overt was awesome. Threw some pictures up there in the chat so people can check out the car. Scott, you mentioned the longest days at Nelson. Absolutely. That is one of the most historical pieces of that. And like we said, the new ownership is working on bringing back a lot of those really cool, fun events. They've had some SCCA events out at Nelson's recently. I believe they've got a Porsche 944 festival, I think, on Labor Day weekend, if I remember right. If you want to check out their schedule, obviously go to Google, bang in Nelson Ledges or Pit Race or Mid-Ohio. But the most important thing we can stress you is get out and do this stuff and enjoy it. We're here to sell you the parts. We're here to keep you safe with the safety equipment, everything that you need to go do it. But you got to get out and try this stuff.
Gosh.
You can't, road racing, autocrossing, it isn't a spectator sport. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's probably a little critical. It's way better being inside the car
That's
than
right.
just being a spectator. A lot of fun though. But get out and enjoy this stuff. If you need instruction, Aaron's your guy,
Hit us
along
up
with the
on
whole
Facebook.
entire crew at
Yeah.
Mid-Ohio, that they do a phenomenal job. But get out and enjoy it.
Yeah. If you're local to us too, I mean, there's racetracks all over the United States, and they do those track nights SCCA does, not only here, but all over the place.
Yes.
But like in our backyard for our local folks here, you've got Nelson Ledges, you got Mid-Ohio, you also have Eric Heller and his son Brian that put
Yep.
on the Akron Sports Car Club out at
Yes.
Dragway 42.
Those have been amazing.
Unbelievable. I mean, you go out there, they have testing 2 nights, like on a Wednesday night for what, $50 or
You can
something.
get tons of
You-
laps.
Yeah.
You'll burn a set of pads up.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
ran out of fuel in the C8 on one of their test nights. I think I made, what did I make? 12 hits, I think. And the courses that Akron
It's
Sports Car
fast.
Club puts together, they're fast. They can be 60, 70 plus miles an hour.
1 mile
They're
long.
a minute long autocross, which for autocross is huge. They're really like a mini road course,
Mhm.
but a
Pretty
ton
much.
of fun. You've got all the Optima events that travel all around that you have.
Mhm.
They've had some of the drive autocross events down at Traders World in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
So we're blessed in Ohio. We've got
Oh,
so
man.
many cool places that we can go to enjoy our hobby and enjoy our sport. So
Yeah, a lot of people, you think Dragway 42, it's a drag strip. Well, if you Google Earth on the drag strip and you look to the east of it, you're going to see all these roads that they use for RV parking. And Eric Heller, got with the track after they, reconditioned the track after all those years and said, you got an autocross course, and owners are like, what are you talking about? Well, we come out and autocross, set some cones up. And now
yeah,
it's a booming deal. And the track owners are really awesome too,
Yep.
and they love having you guys out there. But yeah, if you want to get in the racing and do some of that stuff, maybe you just got that little streetcar Miata or whatever you have, you can go out there and push the car to its limits safely, and the worst you're going to do is hit a pylon and maybe spin out in the grass.
yeah. And we sell rubbing compound to get those cone marks out. And
Yeah,
I've
there
used
you
a
go.
lot of it because unfortunately I've
Our
hit some cones
Tesla
here and
being
there.
white. Oh my
Our
god.
Tesla. Yeah, you still got to buff that, I think. It's got some Brian marks all over it. But get out and enjoy yourself. Get out and enjoy our sport, our hobby, and our industry. Aaron, can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Thanks,
for,
guys.
joining us
Appreciate
today,
it. Always
man.
getting to
It's
see you
always
guys.
great to
Yeah,
see you,
man.
Sure.
And Summit Racing fans, smash that like button. Follow us on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube videos because there's always great content coming out. Customers, fans, can't thank you enough for joining us today. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday, a great Friday, and an awesome weekend. We'll see you soon.
All right. See
See
you
you
guys.
guys.